might be a good idea.
Remind me about the activity.
And some about the heating and cooling system too.
That's specific.
Good. Some intraternships.
There you go.
Intraternships.
I call to order the June 11, 2018 regular business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates? Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Present.
Mr. Davis? Here. Mr. Messer?
Present.
Mr. Morosky?
Here.
President Jones?
Here. Thank you. Tonight, we want to introduce to those of you who know, I'm sure everybody in this audience knows this man, but Mr. Ozzie Davis has been already sworn in as our newest board member who replaced Lannis Timmons. And he had an informal swearing in on May 30th by General Counsel Dan Hoying in order for him to immediately take his seat. So this evening, we want to conduct a more formal swearing in ceremony so that Mr. Davis can share this experience with his family and the community. Treasurer Wagner and Mr. Davis, please prepare for the oath of office. Family and friends, please feel free to come down and share in this moment as well.
So you can follow along.
Okay. You ain't my friend no more. Since I'm on the school board, you're not my friend no more. That's messed up, Craig. Of course I do.
Family and friends and extended family, right?
You said friends.
Yes.
If Craig ain't a friend, I ain't got no friends.
You don't have friends?
I said if Craig ain't my friend, I ain't got no friends.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So raise your right hand. I, repeat your name, do solemnly swear
I, Ozzie Davis III, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of a board member of the Board of Education
discharge the duties of a board member of the Board of Education
of the Cincinnati City School District
of the Cincinnati City School District
of the City of Cincinnati, Ohio, during my continuance in office.
of the City of Cincinnati, Ohio, during my continuance in office.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Jim.
Congratulations, don't go anywhere yet. Well, that's okay. You can make your new board member comments if you have some.
I stand humbled, honored, and excited to serve. I really want to thank each of you and Melanie in her absence for believing in me. It took 6 people to believe in me that I had enough of what it takes to replace Lannis, who replaced Chris, and who I just walked past his picture in that room, and it kind of touched me because I wasn't prepared for that. But I can feel his presence here, and he was already so very important to me. And his service on this board, it often kept me home. And I want you guys to know that people depend on you, so they don't have to come. Like, I would text Ryan, I would watch from home and text Ryan, or text Erica, or call Eve tomorrow, or say, Mike, what the heck are you guys doing? But I wasn't out there in the seats. Everybody can't be like Craig. I am absolutely ecstatic for this opportunity. I want to thank my big sister. She could tell you guys that my father pounded education into us at an early age. So being poor and going to Rockdale, really, it never stunted my desire for education. And I am that black guy that got a law degree and moved back to the street he was born on in Avondale. And I tell the kids at Rockdale that it's one thing you can get, and that's education. You might not be able to buy a jet, you might not be able to buy a Lamborghini, but you can get an education. And this district, it's one of the best in the world. And I'm so humbly honored to be a part of it. I want to thank my wife and son, my wife for allowing us to move on Eden after I got out of law school, my son for not crying about having to go to Rockdale and Walnut Hills, and the young people here from the Avondale Youth Council, the alumni. I am nothing without you. I love you with all my heart. God bless you all, and thank you very kindly. I will give it my absolute all, and I do ask to be checked. If I get out of line, I stray, please check me. I'm used to it. My big sister, they've been checking me since I was very young. She took me to my first Walnut Hills basketball game. I think I was 5 years old, 1970. She was a junior or sophomore or something at Walnut Hills. And I've been being checked ever since. They were chasing me under them stands, and I remember. I want you guys to know that I'm in this with you 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And as you take your seat, I just want to comment that it is indeed an honor to have you sitting at this table with us. I can tell that you're going to be an asset to us, just as you are in the community. And if any of us can help you in any way, just let us know. And this group doesn't have any problems checking people, so.
We've already met, girl.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting, May 21st, 2018, the business meeting, May 21st, 2018, special public meeting, May 25th, 2018, special public joint meeting, June 5th, 2018.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Okay, in Ms. Bates' absence, is there someone from Policy Committee that would like to present the May 17th Policy Committee meeting report?
Yes, Madam Chair, I will do that. Hadn't planned on it, but we will definitely get to it. Finance.
I can do it if you want, Eve,
I can find it. We'll
even
be
though I
all
wasn't
right.
there.
Even though you weren't there.
I've read
Yeah.
the minutes.
We're Geminis, so we can, I found it, so I'm ready to go with it. Thank you, though. We had continuing discussion on policy 9142, which is the community involvement one, which really is mostly about LSDMCs. It's just misnamed. And it's my understanding is that it needs to be placed in the new LSDMC handbook. So we hopefully will be finishing that up this coming week for this month's policy meeting. We also had continuing discussion regarding non-school organizations, and for the most part followed the recommendations of the internal auditor and legal counsel, and the actions are listed before you. Policy 1100, district organization. The council report, general counsel, assistant general counsel reported for the most part that legal counsel thought that we did not necessarily need to have very many changes to any of that collection, which dealt with district goals and also superintendent hiring and employment and what have you. And as you will see this evening when we discuss these, the board's policy committee did make some changes in an effort to involve the board more closely in the description of those policies and what our role would be. And then we reviewed very important policies regarding gun violence and weapons. And then for other business, we started the dialogue, which I think administration's going to be preparing to present, and that is the issue of our school boundary lines. And this arose all the way back to last year with the creation of the CAN School in Clifton for Spring Grove Village and also Cuff, and that those boundary lines needed to reflect neighborhood lines recognized by the city. And that was an important step, which would then take into consideration some issues regarding Winton Hills Academy, Pleasant Hill Academy, and even Mount Airy and possibly Chase boundary lines as those would be figured in, and also leading this effort on the kind of east side was Chairman Bates, who is of particular interest about the PRM boundary lines and the, help me out,
Woodford, Paideia.
Woodford, Paideia, and then Silverton in that cluster, because again, beginning to face enrollment issues, beginning to face some major neighborhood asks that even a magnet become a neighborhood school for Woodford, Paideia, or what have you. So that's in the process of working its way through. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions or comments about the report? Mr. Messer, as Chair of the Finance Committee, please present the May 17, 2018 Finance Committee meeting report.
Thank you, Madam President. We gave legislative updates at the last meeting, so I won't belabor those points. Lots of things coming our way, and we'll be paying close attention to what's happening in Columbus over the next 6 months as we anticipate the changing of guards at the governor's office all the way down through the legislature, some potential changes there, and a lame duck session where really anything is possible. So we're staying very close with our government relations partners. The one thing in addition to the legislative updates is they are doing some benchmarking on the Big 8 to determine what other districts that would be comparable to CPS are doing from an abatement standpoint. Clearly, after that meeting, we had our ACES meeting where the abatement was a big topic of conversation, but they are going to do some benchmarking, so we'll have data to assess what other major urban districts are doing. A couple of other things. We spent some time discussing the supplier diversity and minority inclusion goals and priorities for CPS, and we will now be recommending that we set specific goals so that we can continue to track that progress going forward. And then I think as we've had lots of conversations on school funding and understanding the state funding model and how that maybe provides a disadvantage to CPS, the Finance Committee discussed putting together basically a Finance 101 educational presentation that board members or administration, whoever that ends up being, can go into the community and have those conversations, because while it is complex, it's important for all of us to understand that, especially as we continue to see the growth that we're seeing at CPS, and with that comes the need for more dollars, not less. And I think we need to be well-versed in where our funding comes from and where it goes and how that's determined so we can help the public. So more to come on that.
Do board members have questions or comments? Thank you. Mr. Messer. Ms. Bolton, as Chair of Student Achievement Committee, please present the May 21st, 2018 Student Achievement Committee report.
Thank you. We had quick updates regarding the zoning in the city of Cincinnati for CLCs, and that passed. We also visited the issues required by CFT contract regarding two committees that the Student Achievement Committee is supposed to be involved with. We also heard that there's still discussion taking place with a group called Village as it pertains to E8S and other programming. We also saw, as in the minutes, you will see the need for expansion of quality seats, CPS preschool promise seats, and got assurances that that would be taking place and that we're well ahead of the enrollment as we speak now, and so they're anticipating even greater, longer waiting lists, but at least more children in seats at the start of the effort. Taft Elementary again said that they would like to expand their pilot swimming program, not just be for the kindergartners, but go K-3, as well as the idea that perhaps our downtown schools, particularly Rothenburg and Hayes Porter, would be interested if we can establish that partnership, to expand that partnership with Cincinnati Recreation Commission, who supplies the lifeguards and the experts. We're still working to make sure that we have a significant report regarding later high school starts, but now we are waiting Metro's report regarding adjusting how their initial report to cost and capital outlay might be changed if we have two staggered starts. But again, those starts, regardless of what is decided, do not start next year. Public Affairs is arranging for good announcements regarding expansion of the footprint in both the west side and also as a result of the CANS expansion. But most particularly, and I'm so sorry that Member Bates is not here because I know this has been an important topic for her entire tenure on the board, and that is we had two outstanding presentations, and we were glad to be able to participate and have some say about what was going on regarding the curricular efforts in new course of study in fine arts and the fine arts disciplines, and then also social studies, which of course is my favorite. But the teachers presented, as did Dr. Rudnick, a fantastic effort in the work that they do, and they are our experts, and we appreciated the curriculum office's work on that, and Assistant Superintendent Amat for leading us through that, and we recommend tonight approval for both of those, and we have the dollars and the amounts and what it really entails. So we're very proud of that work. And as you just found out earlier, we also have been working as well on the tool for the superintendent evaluation, which began in August as we move through a transitional superintendent evaluation tool, bridging the superintendencies of Ronan and Mitchell. And tonight, we presented to the board what we hope is the final product, as Student Achievement has that responsibility to produce a superintendent evaluation tool, and we appreciate the superintendent's research and work on it, and want to thank especially my good Gemini twin over there for his efforts in that effort in getting that done. And then finally, we had a big presentation on summer learning, and I'm still hoping that social studies is all part of that, and I understand that it is. And then we still are talking about the amount and level of assessments that both the state requires, the nation requires, and our local requirements, because I know that the board is interested and the community is interested in reducing what assessments we can when we can. So I present as written and thank everybody in the community and on the committee, and particularly the administration, for helping us get so much work done.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Do board members have any questions or comments about the report? Okay, I need a motion to approve the committee reports.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to approve is carried. Okay, we have two presentations tonight. Mrs. Mitchell, would you please introduce our speakers?
Happily. So in Cincinnati Public Schools, we say pre-K through 12, everything that we do is about getting our kids to a future beyond CPS. So it's not just about graduating them, but making sure that they have a future that is hopeful. And so it gives me great joy this evening to present Brittany Cousins, who is our Career and Employment Manager for the district, along with Kayla Rickles, who is our College Manager for the district. And they're going to provide an update for you as to their work and how they're getting our kids to a place beyond CPS.
Hi everyone, and good evening.
It's not on.
Hello, there we are. Hi everyone and good evening. My name is Kayla Rickles. I'm the college manager. As mentioned, I'm joined tonight by Brittany Cousins, our career-based learning and employment manager. We also have 3 of our esteemed colleagues with us to present from their perspectives what this work has looked like during this academic year. So I'm joined by John Scott, the program manager of community relations at Children's Hospital and the chair of the BECC. Tanya Ficklin, who is a Walnut Hills school counselor and our CPS lead counselor for the district, and Sandy Harine, who is the Aiken school counselor as well, so that you can really hear how that's going. So this work of college and career is really centered on all the My Tomorrow principles. So we are really excited and driven by the 8 guiding principles that are outlined in the My Tomorrow vision, and truly feel that as college and career leads for the district, Brittany and I are really trying to open up the doors for our students in alignment with our partners and our counselors and our teachers that all work within our school buildings to open up these opportunities for students. So first, we're going to walk you through the career and employment updates, and then the college employment updates, and then we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Kayla. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So this year, we really focused on building upon and also expanding upon our existing career-based learning framework and really categorizing the progression of learning as well as the experiences that correspond with these different buckets. So the 4 buckets that we've categorized our work in have been awareness, exposure, readiness, and employment. As many of you know, we start this work at 3rd grade, and we really focus on building a concept of what a career is. So what is a career? Who functions in a career? What does that look like? As well as exploring student interest at young students, but also as future workers. We then progress through the 8th grade, where we start the exploration of the 16 nationally recognized career clusters. And as students enter into high school, we transition into the career and workforce readiness piece, where we have various experiences for them to practice the skills that they're learning in advisory. This is made possible through our work with the BECC, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And this year, we're excited to really bring to the forefront our employment and pipeline programs. So in the 12th grade, students get to transition into this area at certain schools and really learn about how they can begin their career starting in 12th grade. So this year, we were fortunate enough to start 2 of those employment pipelines. The first is the Supply Chain Logistics Program, which is currently housed at Dater and Euler, and that is a partnership with DHL, Partners for a Competitive Workforce, Cincinnati Works, as well as PNC Bank. The second one is actually cybersecurity, which is at Taft High School, and that is a partnership with ComSpark Tech Innovation Summit, Lead Tribune Media Group, as well as Belcan. So as we progress through the course of the next couple of school years, we will not only build out the number of pipelines in those given industries, but also the number of students that get to participate in those. So as we progress, we expand the current as well as build new ones. So our celebration is really centered upon that employment work and really finding a model that works for our students. So we are excited to begin that industry-specific training as well as expose them to the various workforce readiness skills and techniques that they need to be employable, as well as provide them opportunities to gain a paycheck in high school, as well as secure employment upon graduation. We've also really worked really hard to increase not only the number of partnerships, but also the depth of those partnerships, and many of our employment partners are previous volunteers of our standard events such as the Career Expo. In addition, we created a new opportunity for students to explore and really learn more about their life skills, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I want to go ahead and turn it over to John, who will talk a little bit more about our programs.
Good evening. I'm John Scott with Cincinnati Children's Hospital. It's my pleasure to be before you today, really as a partner in our work to secure our future. The Business Education Connectivity Council, BECC, which is being changed to the Business Advisory Council, we'll talk about that, has really been working about 4 years now as a business community in partnership with CPS. It came out of actually a leadership project out of the Regional Chamber's Leadership Action Program, where a few community leaders saw a need with CPS to kind of close that gap in terms of exposing our students to the world of work right here in Cincinnati. And so thus the BECC was formed. Out of the gate, they thought about what are kind of some signature events and things that we can come together as a business community to offer to our students. So one of those signature events is the Career Expo that happens every fall. This past year, I understand we had over 700 students from 7 to 9 high schools and 11th grade to come and be exposed to, again, the world of work right in Cincinnati. So you had companies like Cincinnati Children's, GE, P&G, the firefighters, the hair salons, all various opportunities for youth to really gain meaningful employment and to be exposed to those options. So we actually have a video that probably does a better job of capturing what this year's event was about, and so we'll take a few minutes to show that now.
Participate in this experience. We have over 55 businesses here to help our students explore the variety of careers that exist in the Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati community. The goal of the event is for our students to walk away with what they need to do in order to get to the careers of their choice. If they have a little hesitancy of what that is, our businesses are here to connect the dots for them. And they are also participating in some in-depth sessions about different careers, including supply chain, knowing their rights as young workers and adult workers, as well as what they need to do in order to cross that bridge into adulthood.
What's most exciting to me is that our students basically have the ability to walk onto the front porch of 55 different businesses in the area. And they represent a number of careers and opportunities.
Definitely not a CPS practice.
My contact information is right there. Yes. Awesome. Yep.
I think the most important thing that I want my students to take away from this is enthusiasm and optimism about the future. I think many of our students, they're juniors, they're nervous, they know that their future is so close and they're totally unprepared for it in many of their minds. However, this is creating some reality, putting a face to their future in some cases. And so for that reason, I think they're going to be able to walk away from here with a renewed optimism and enthusiasm, and also hopefully a real dedication to doing what they have to do to make sure that the future they're kind of starting to envision now becomes a reality for them. So the handshakes that they're experiencing right now, I think for them are representing a first step towards a career with one of these wonderful organizations that are coming to us from our community.
As I said, I think for more and more employers, it's all about being able to have people skills.
The employers understand how important it is to invest in our youth in this way before they reach adulthood and make those decisions, giving them the word of options.
This will help me because then I can think about other careers that I've met today and other people that I met today and give me a good idea like what I really want to do.
More knowledge on my profession, so I want to be an officer. So when I learned about I can be an officer and a firefighter today, that's powerful. That's more powerful.
I feel like I get more understanding because like I'm actually talking to the person, like that's actually doing the career, the job. So like I get more understanding and more information about them instead of like reading a paper or going on a website. I get to interact more with the person themselves. So that was a great representation, sorry for the video. In addition to the Career Expo, this is the Life Ready event. This was actually a great use of our district resources with technology. So we streamed this event to all of our high schools live and also through their advisory class. And this was actually birthed through student voice. So a couple of Hughes students wanted to learn more about life skills. How do I get an apartment? How do I manage my money? How do I move out my mother's house? So things that our students often ask that we don't necessarily cover, that are traditionally covered at home, but we provided them a space to learn a little bit more. So Children's Hospital was kind enough to allow us to co-locate this experience in their metabolic kitchen, where they learned about nutrition and how to prepare healthy meals and really be nutritious on a budget. And then we also had partners from PNC as well as some of our other institutions about really learning how to be successful and overcoming barriers. We also had a job shadow experience. This is probably our students' favorite activity because they get to go out of the classroom into the world of work. As you see, we've had 15 businesses allow us to come into their organizations, and we had students at the fire department, Channel 9, as well as Children's Hospital for that experience. And our culminating activity was actually mock interviews. We were very excited. It's one of the most engaging opportunities for our business community because they actually get to front face with the students for a good period of time. One of our best experience was actually at Aiken High School, where we got an opportunity to film some of this in action.
Sounds like you have good energy. What would you say are your strengths and
The energy in the room was just ever going, like it never stopped. So it was hard for us to kind of cut it off. But Centos, Dinsmore, as well as Children's Hospital really participated in that day to make it a success. None of this would have been possible without our network of employers through the BECC. We are fortunate to have the level of support from the business community that we do. And I will also turn it over to John to explain some of the exciting changes that are occurring.
So as I mentioned, the BECC has been in place going on 4 years now, and what we were really excited about is, again, this opportunity to work with Cincinnati Public Schools on behalf of our youth. And coming to find out, Ohio law now is in some ways getting with the program and actually mandating that there be a business advisory council to work with CPS. So all school districts. So we already have a model in place, and so the committee was really excited about law. Oftentimes we are not because we think law gets in the way of getting things done. But in this regard, we really think we have a platform to start from. We actually are meeting tomorrow to dig further into what this means for our work with Cincinnati Public Schools. But again, the objective is to foster a relationship between the business community and schools, preparing students for future careers and learning, and ensuring that the work of educators are aligned to those business needs. This mandate, again, in our current BEC will be renamed to be the Business Advisory Council going forward. Additional responsibilities will meet quarterly as well. The committee now is already meeting 6 times a year. And then this idea of creating a plan that really outlines how we'll work together with the district. We're continuing to flesh that out, and we'll be giving regular updates on that.
So looking forward to next year, we continue to expand upon what our offerings are as well as the partnerships that we bring to the district. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that students get the opportunities that they deserve and all of exposure to all of those 16 recognized clusters, but also to really work on the expansion of our employment models. Next year, we will be focusing on manufacturing, hospitality and tourism, as well as public safety. And we also have energy around automotive services for that expansion. And we also want to continue that next iteration for the 1920 school year. I'll turn it over to Kayla.
Thank you. So my role as the college manager is a brand new role to the district. I started in October, and so that's given us an opportunity to quickly build relationships with the 28 school counselors we have across our 15 high schools to think about what this should look like for our students. And so we are really lucky in the Cincinnati region to be surrounded by really rich post-secondary education options. So within a 10-mile radius, we have a plethora of opportunities: public, private, small, large, residential, and commuter. So our students can really stay in Cincinnati and access a lot of opportunities. It gives us an opportunity as a district to really tap into those colleges and think about what types of experiences and programs we want to deeply impact our students and have them have an awareness of where they might like to go when they graduate. So first, I'm going to invite Sandy Harine up to talk about our celebrations and learnings this year. Sandy is one of our school counselors that's been deeply involved in some of the newest programming that we've been able to bring to the district.
I've been in the district for about 10 years, at Aiken 10 years, and I just want to say this is one of the most exciting times to be a CPS counselor. We have, as you've already heard about our career end and our college stuff, we have some amazing things that are going on right now. One of the things that I'd like to talk about is on the culture, the college culture programs, something that started a couple years were these collaboratives that are in the schools, and there's one for college, and it's a peer leadership that has just transformed the cultures of our high schools, with peers helping their peers on things like college applications and what is your pathway and things like that, and all of the things under the college culture programs feed into that. The UC ambassadors, the Peer Forward, the College for Every Student, those are programs that are in various different schools that help strengthen this college collaborative. But the students are, it's not only the counselors and our partners that are working, the students themselves are interested to know how many students filled out an application, how many filled out FAFSA, and it's been honestly culture changing with those programs. We also are, obviously very strong in our partnerships. We have partnerships with several universities that have programs that are helping prepare students to be ready for college, such as UC, Ohio State, and Miami. And then there's also a partnership that we have with UC that specifically is in IT, and the students are earning credits, college credits in the whole IT program, and then earning access into that. Of course, we love our partners, and our partners are very strong with us, with CYC and Project Grad and YMCA and Upward Bound and Families Forward, all having a different kind of piece of the pie on helping us with helping college readiness and access. We also have some specific programs that have been introduced to the district this year, and such as, for example, the Empower Me Tour, where the students went to the convention center and they had all these really great seminars, as well as some different panels just talking about what it means to go to college, and they even gave out scholarships there. Students got some pretty hefty scholarships as well. One of the things that research has shown is that students will stay at colleges if they have relationships. Relationships are real important. So we're working to try to start cohorts of students. So when we have groups of students around the district, maybe going to Wright State or going to Cincinnati State or going to UC or going to Miami, we're trying to provide programs where the kids can kind of connect before they go to increase retention. And we did that this year with Cincinnati State. And so I'm very excited to see what that outcome is. And then we've had some specific funding commitments. Cincinnati Pride, which is if students qualify for the Pell, they get free tuition to UC. There's a Be Great grant with Cincinnati State, which is a very similar grant. And then EKU also has a grant in the same way. So we're pursuing those kind of partnerships so that students can pay for their college and they don't see that as an obstacle.
So next, next Tanya Ficklin's going to come up, our lead counselor, and talk a little bit about the partnerships that we've been developing.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I am talking about the College Consortium, and the College Consortium has three groups that partner with us. It's the CPS staff, college admission partners, and then college access partners. And part of the purpose of the College Consortium is actually to help our students, or help to ensure that our students are college ready. And the goal is to help get them to college and then get them through college. And in order to do this, part of the conversations that are taking place right now is that we are talking about having common language. So make sure that all partners are using the same wording and that we understand what that means from all aspects. Another thing that we're looking at is identifying a grade level milestones. So what does it look like for a student to be ready for college and beyond, and then backtracking that to identify what needs to happen in 7th grade, and 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and then what resources need to be put in at those grade levels in order to ensure that our students are ready to go to college and go through college. And then we are also looking at what role each partner will take within that plan to ensure that our students have everything that they need to be successful and to contribute to society.
So in that vein, when we talk about what our plans are for next year, those milestones are going to be a huge component. So really wrapping our partnerships around these appropriate grade level milestones that we co-created with the college access partners and our college campus partners and the voice of the school counselor to understand what the students need and how we can support it from the district level. So a few examples, every sophomore at the end of next year will have an opportunity to go on a college campus visit funded in part by our college campus partners. On October 18th, we'll have our first annual CPS College Night, of which you're all invited, and we'll invite families in to learn about the college process and have opportunities to engage. We're also looking at those deep exposure opportunities and expanding those too. So the UCIT Early College Academy will expand to Clark and Schroeder next year. DAP Alliance, which is a program run from UC's DAP College, will expand to Dater next year, representing the first Title I school to have this opportunity. And the Miami Educator Academy will go to Aiken High School. So it's really a combination of thinking through with our college counselor or school counselors and our partners what these students need and then how we can achieve it. So all of this culminates in the 3 E's, and that's what we're really here for, is that I'm really excited that as a school district, we are saying it's not enough to get our students just to graduation, but that we need to prepare them for life. And so this year's class of 2018, 93% of those students declared into their pathway by graduation day, and we expect that number to continue to rise. With these partnerships and programs and the hard work that our counselors do, we know that that rate will continue to grow as we think deeply about what should happen for our students in college and career. So at this point, we'll take any questions you may have for us.
Do board members have questions or comments? Mr. Messer.
Just a note to say thank you for that presentation. I think this is probably one of the most important areas at CPS, is that whole career and life readiness work. So thank you for your work there. You know, as a first generation college student myself and from a school where I think there were 3 of us that went on to college for my class, it just wasn't something that I was used to based on our environment. Getting the access to a university campus, I think it was in 5th and 6th grade, I got to go to Purdue for a camp. And that started that fire. So I think that sophomore year, getting them on the campus is great, but if there's a way to start that exposure earlier, I think you can really start to ignite a passion that then allows them a little bit more time to prepare for that moment. Absolutely. 2 things that I just would say I'd love to see up here at some point, and having waited over a week for my HVAC person to show up and then see that nice little piece of paper with that amount laying on my counter is a reminder of the importance of the trades. And frankly, there's a shortage. And I think these are incredible careers that I would love to see somehow, some way baked into the programming that we're offering going forward. And then I love the collaboration with Leadership Action with the Cincinnati Chamber. I think one thing that would be great is we go out and have the conversations with the community to not only support this, but to truly back it and help us go further faster. I think this is one thing we could see people really invest in from the corporate community specifically. There's tangible benefits here, and I think we can see sponsorships and all sorts of creative things as we go forward. I'd love to see that map, though, say, in the next 10 to 20 years, these are the 10 most prolific jobs that we anticipate a need for workforce. And oh, by the way, here's what CPS is doing to ensure that this region is successful. As companies look to Cincinnati as a place where they want to locate or where they want to expand, That's data that I think would be helpful for the chamber as well as for CPS.
And we have a great relationship with our trade unions, many of which were at the expo and participate in all of our events. And a lot of our students are taking that opportunity to engage in the trades. In addition to your point about asking the corporate partners for more. That is one of the most surprising pieces of this work for me, how generous they've been so far, not just with providing opportunities for employment, but helping us with transportation. So DHL provided transportation to and from their facility, from our school buildings, as well as providing a one-year transportation service for those students during their first year of employment. So we're learning to ask and ask smartly so that we can continue to really engage the community, but the sponsorships and all of that is in the works. So thank you for that. We'll carry it forward.
Mr. Davis.
How about the forecasting that Mr. Messer spoke about? Is that programmed and baked into the program? Yes, and that will be a growing part of the BECC. So we do have members of the chamber on our BECC, and they inform the work, and actually how we landed on supply chain, because in our area, that is one of the in-demand fields, as well as manufacturing. So we chose those pipelines very strategically based on what the labor statistics say for the nation, but more specifically our region. So the chamber is heavily involved in that selection, especially with IT and manufacturing, which are the ones that they bubble up to the top.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Bolton.
Thank you so much for the work that you do, and I think it's absolutely critical because no other district has the capacity that we have to offer this, and that makes us a district of destination, even beyond our borders. I'm very committed to all 16 clusters, and I know we have to phase into that. I'm also committed to making sure that there are kind of home campuses for them, but that distance learning can help us make sure that kids don't have to choose one school for one particular thing too early, and I know there's lots of talk about that. I would say too, on the collaborative piece, a lot of people may not know this, but the collaboratives that were started was an outgrowth of the My Tomorrow and really part of the Mitchell legacy before she was superintendent. And it has changed the culture very significantly because it allows the children to start to think about being grown-ups and also more particularly think about college because we need to help them dream. I would say just as a big thing though, frankly, in my 10 or 11 years on the board, when we started back in '08 or when I started, it was really all about K-12. And then it began to be K-16. Because we started to worry about the college piece. And then it became kind of PK-16 because of the preschool promise, not only when it happened, but the thought of it. It was just 4 years old now, if you will. But now it's actually become, based upon your work and the superintendent's leadership and the demand of the community, it is PKWF. It is preschool, it is pre-kindergarten to workforce. I mean, and this is a huge strategic change of paradigm for all of us. So I applaud the leadership and the work on the ground. And me, I'm very excited when we lead and don't follow. So thank you so much.
Mr. Morosky.
I would just like to reiterate what my colleagues have said. Thank you so much for the awesome presentation. It was really exciting to hear about the sophomores all getting a college visit next year. And then not right now, but maybe offline or in student achievement, I'd like to know about how colleges are selected for which students and what students are going where, and if there's a equation that figures that out or if it's proximity. But then also, and I've said this in this room a few times, and I'll say it again, one place that I think we are uniquely positioned to do both of your jobs in one is with teaching, particularly with early education. And I've talked to some people about what that could look like, and we have partnerships teed up already that could make that possible. And as we continue to expand early education and need for quality teachers in early education, we have a partnership with Cincinnati State, College Credit Plus. Mount St. Joe wants to hang out with us more, which is good news. So I just want to say again publicly, that's a priority, at least for me, to try to figure out what that looks like. And I know there's will among teachers and our college partners to do that. So thank you so much, and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Copeland Dansby.
Thank you all for the amazing presentation. I have to agree with my colleagues here. I'm very impressed with the work that you are doing. So being the parent of I guess a recent graduate, 2 years in, a CPS graduate, preparing our students for life after high school is amazing. So to see that firsthand is incredible. I wonder how we integrate the newly developed or released graduation requirements in any of this work. Do you all deal with that at all?
So I've been working with the school counselors deeply around the graduation requirements, and this year specifically around the alternative pathways, so that we can really understand it. Unfortunately, with the timeline of the release of information, we're often catching up to what we need instead of planning with our seniors ahead. So we continue that process, and we're thinking internally about what systems and what supports we need to provide schools so they can readily access the information to know if we're like at a green or yellow or red light for students to be able to advise them through. So it's certainly a work in progress.
Okay, good. And I'm really happy to hear that, because I know that we hear from parents a lot about those requirements and how we're always trying to catch up with that kind of thing. Also very impressive, in every part of your presentation, I heard the word partnership. And thanks to our partners, too numerous to mention. And so I like what you said about asking smartly. We're so rich in our town with the corporate partnerships. Let's not be afraid to go after them. And they are very generous to our district in that. So that word partnership, we can't do this work on our own, but I commend you all, and because I know you all and how wonderful you are and how vested you are with our children. Congratulations, and thank you for your work.
Yes, one last comment before we close. It's actually a question for you. I'm sorry, your name again?
Me?
No.
Oh, Brittany.
You mentioned something about student voice.
Yes.
And I either missed the context or something, but explain to me what you were saying. I got the impression you were saying that the young people, the students, are involved in choice, and tell me how that plays out.
Absolutely. So we garner their voice through multiple channels. They submit surveys through advisory, but my reference was to the creation of Life Ready. Life Ready just came out of a conversation with 2 Hughes High School seniors, and I asked them specifically, if you could go back, what would you have liked to experience through the course of the career-based learning program? And they were just running off all of the different ideas, and all of them centered around life skills. So we do a lot of career exploration and readiness, but there's a whole nother preparation that has to occur for you to be successful in any of those pathways. So we specifically focused in on life skills, which like, as I said, traditionally we think occur at home, but even opening up the platform for them to ask questions of their peers or just general community partners and business partners to get that, that voice from a different sector. So they were really excited about that. But we also use those peer leadership sessions with our career students to really garner that voice, and they give me very open feedback on what they would like to see, what they would like to change within all of our different programming and experiences. So we really use that and try to implement it in real time as best as possible and incorporate it into our planning.
Thank you, and thank you all for a wonderful presentation. We look forward to hearing from you soon. It's always good to hear about these kinds of things as we're trying to prepare our young people for future lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
So our next presenter is Jen Wagner, and as Ms. Wagner approaches the mic, on our agenda, we have under Board Matters, item number 1, Board Priorities. We may not need to have a full depth discussion about that, because I believe that Ms. Wagner, she had a copy, the administration had a copy of our board priorities and the 2.5-page summary, bulleted summary that we all provided them. So I think that she's incorporated some of this in her presentation. So just wanted to share that with folks. So get out of here maybe 10 minutes earlier or something. Okay. All right. Ms. Wagner.
Okay. Thank you. It's my distinct pleasure tonight to present to you the first draft of the general fund budget. And it's the preceding presentation that really makes my job exciting. And so it's with a great pleasure that I help fund programs like that. And so it's just really cool to watch. So, so to kick off the evening, this is what President Jones was referring to on the document that you created after your retreat. There was more board goals on that, but they didn't necessarily apply to the financial budget. And so I'm trying to list, let me back up and say, this effort was a huge team effort with the leadership team, budget commission, all the school principals and their ILTs and LSDMCs, and our leadership team. So for your goals, what we've been able to fund in this year's budget is to supporting school choice and your growth strategies. We are now at 22 schools with Vision 2020 for next year. In expanding grade levels, LEAP and Spencer will be expanding, 4th grade at LEAP and 9th grade at Spencer. And then coming soon, and we're working hard to plan for and do things for CANS to open, the Clifton Neighborhood School and Mercy, if you approve the resolution tonight. In terms of preschool expansion, we're expanding with 4 additional classrooms, and with our partnership with the Cincinnati Preschool Promise, we should be able to offer tuition assistance to over 1,500 3- and 4-year-olds in quality preschool programs. Excuse my voice, I'm overcoming a cold. In terms of equity, this is our longest list because if you notice the ribbon behind the words, equity ribbons through all of our decision-making, all of our thoughts, and all of our planning. And so consequently, we spend a lot of money providing equity to our students. And so the programs seem repetitive to some of the other strategies, but they cross some of your goals. So Vision 2020, My Tomorrow, student activation, which is the student leadership programs out in the schools that was started under My Tomorrow. We actually give extra on top of the school budgets money to help with their programmatic needs. For example, foreign language teachers or ESL supports. We help pay for the Montessori dues and the new tech dues for Aiken and Rothenberg. Hayes. Ezra Taylor, thank you. And then in some schools we give them some extra financial support for traffic assistance because of the way their traffic patterns are going. We've added counselors to high schools and assistant principals of instruction, and we've added security to the budget to help with today's culture and climate. We've expanded companion classes and distance learning for, one example is that some of our elementary students are taking algebra from a Walnut Hills teacher, distance learning. We provide many personal Wi-Fi devices for families who don't have Wi-Fi at home, and so that the students can do their online learning there. We've expanded to a 7-hour, 7-bell day. We expanded art offerings in our buildings, extracurricular activities, and we've increased custodians to help with the cleanliness in the program in our schools. In terms of community and partnership and public engagement, we've added staff to that and had an 18% budget increase as a recommendation. And Ms. Worley has some new initiatives. Some examples are the LSDMC training that she's doing and the CLC redesign. So just to remind everybody about the CPS process, it really starts in the fall with when the board provides their goals for us. And then at the very end of the process, you approve the superintendent and the treasurer's recommendations on a budget. The performance leadership team, formerly known as the senior management team, takes those goals and sets annual scope. So for our multi-year initiatives such as My Tomorrow, we're going into our 5th year of implementation. We as a group, as a leadership team, decide how big that scope is for the next year and what we can afford. And then the schools and the budget departments take over. Either the schools are meeting their Title I assessment needs, or the departments are trying to develop budgets to support our strategic initiatives. And all that comes together with an approved balanced budget, hopefully on June 25th. We do a host of public hearings, so to engage the public, and then we also have a budget commission that helps monitor our progress. The Budget Commission is made up of union leadership, parents, community members, and district administration. So the timeline starts in October, November of the preceding year, where we look at student projections. There's a team of people that calculate those projections. It feeds into all of our activities, and when the schools start doing their budgets based on formulas. And then in the January, February, March timeframe is when we actually start looking at budgets and analyzing them for compliance and completeness. And then the central office gets to do their thing after that. And then we host a variety of public hearings to get some feedback, and then by June 25th, the last board meeting of the fiscal year, we need an approved budget and appropriations resolution so I can start spending money on July 1. Just as a reminder on the school budgets, starts off with student projections, as I said before, and then we typically use a 3-year promotion and retention rate by school by grade level. And then we make adjustments for certain conditions. So, for example, if we know that a charter school is closing down, then we make an adjustment because we're going to take more kids in. Or if we knew there's an apartment complex going up, that might have an impact on our enrollment. All of the formulas based on staffing, student-based staffing, so that we follow the formulas from the collective bargaining agreements or state and federal law that guides us. And then we adjust for those equity issues, such as extra counselor and extra assistant principal because that school building is struggling with something and they need some extra help, or they have a programmatic need for extra art or foreign language. And then we add more value to the budgets based on how many copy clicks they need and what their substitute, their absenteeism, staff absenteeism rate looks like over a 3-year history. We're required by the contract to add overtime at a minimum. And then we look at home instruction costs and other programmatic needs. Once the staffing is calculated and reviewed, then we add the non-personnel per pupil. This year it was a little over $35 per student, K to 12. And then the schools take over and how to decide how to spend that money. Some of the other choices that they make, one example is for the arts, the fine arts, they get 1 allocation for every 7 load-bearing teachers. So for example, if you have 21 teachers in the building, you're gonna get 3 PE art and music allocations, and they get to choose how much PE, how much art, how much music, technology, or library. And so even though it's driven by formulas, the schools get to personalize it to their needs and their program. This budget is developed on a student projection of 35,544 students for next year. We are closing in on that 36,000, and we're going to get there soon. I just wanted to point out here on this graph where as we're increasing, and we're one of the only urbans that are increasing enrollment, and that provides other challenges for us, right? Increased staffing and in physical capacity in our buildings, that the parochial and the charter schools are also declining. So we're regaining our market share. Here's another picture. It's kind of a new one that I developed today to show everybody that not only do we represent 70%, over 70% of our market share, that we educate those students, we also educate quite a few more. We don't educate them, but we finance their education. So for all of our city residents, we have to pay for their education. It's our responsibility to do so. So it's hard to read that data up there, but 10.3% of our city residents, or over 5,000 students, are on the voucher program, either the Ed Choice, the Autism, or Peterson scholarships. 13% go to charter or community schools, so 6,500 students. And then we have open enrollment. And the last category is students with special needs, or they're placed out of district by courts or based on their IEPs. So what challenges does that present for us? And I'm always taking an opportunity to try to re-educate the public on the State Foundation Challenge. So this is based on the June 8th payment from the state to us, Cincinnati Public Schools. So based on the funded students in our residence of 44,408 students, it generates in their formulas $204 million. And that's an average of $4,500 per child that we educate, or we're responsible for financing. Then they start their deductions. So charter school students are deducted an average of $7,600. So they deduct $50 million for 6,600 students, and it's an average of $7,600. And then you can see the Ed Choice and Peterson scholarships that are significantly more expensive per child per year. After all those deductions and the cap formula, because we are on the cap right now, CPS receives a net of $126 million, which represents about $3,900 for all the students that are left for us, that are educated in our building, our 35,000 students. Oops. So, as I said, our enrollment is growing, and we have to plan for our enrollment expansion. We've had 2 charter schools close this year, ECOD and Carpe Diem. We're expanding grade levels at Leap and Spencer. We're expanding preschool at 4 additional classrooms. We've added 6 new specialized classrooms because of the popularity and the success of CPS, or is drawing those students into the district. We've added 8 additional ESL teachers because of our English as a second language population is growing. And like I said before, we're planning for expansion in Clifton and on the west side at Mercy in 20. So we've had some budget growth this year over last year. We've had, the general fund is absorbing 25 bodies because of the federal allocation decline. We are receiving our actual federal allocations this week, so we're analyzing them. We're going to hope we can shift some of those 25 people back to relieve some of that pressure on the general fund. This year we added 39 paraprofessionals for operational purposes in the buildings. One of the concerns that was shared to us by the CFT union was that overload paraprofessionals were being pulled out of classrooms to help with lunch duty and bus duty and just regular school operations. And so we decided that in order to support our classrooms with the most academic efficiency and support, that we needed to add extra bodies out there to help with those business operations in the schools. In this budget, we've added 14 security assistants. Those are the schools. There's a formula in the student projections that says in an elementary school, for every 150 students, you get a free civil servant. Not free, we fund it, but they get a civil servant, and in the high schools, it's for every 200 students. The schools get to decide how those people are used. So they can choose from in-school suspension, security, reading paraprofessionals, school community coordinators, clerical people. They get to make those choices. And so in those choices, they added 14 security assistants to the buildings. Centrally, we added 2 more people to our response team, added 2.5 more counselors to the budget because of this great work that this team is doing. Our students are becoming much more active in the college-seeking world. If I explained before in the 5-year forecast presentation, our excess costs last year went up over 30%. And just to explain that for a minute, those are adjustments that they made to our state foundation payments several times during the year. The costs are increasing for 2 reasons. One, we're seeing an increase in foster place students outside the district due to the opiate epidemic. And they actually created a new software application so districts can do the excess cost filing online. So that's actually increasing the traffic of monies going back and forth across the district. They were on a paper pencil system, and so it was years before you would get hit with those costs. And now it's becoming faster, so they're catching up, and it's pretty expensive. In addition to that, the transportation costs are going up for 2 reasons. One, we have more foster place students, and we're responsible for helping to pay for their transportation. And our transportation contracts negotiated a 3% annual inflation growth. So our budget target is based off of the May 5-year forecast. We had a forecast of expenditures of $622 million. We deduct off the advances because that's a temporary movement of cash. It's not really an expense. And so in order to keep our cash goals going forward, to maximize the levies so that we can stay in a positive cash flow for the next few years, we have to limit our budget to $609 million. Okay, so hitting too fast. So this is a picture of what our $609 million budget will look like. So if you see the pie chart that's pulled out, those are 17% of our budget comes out of state deductions right off the top. And then the next 66% is actually spent in our schools, either in the school budgets or in centrally managed budgets, but the people actually work and the money gets spent in the schools. 5% for strategic initiatives and 8% for central administration. And I failed to mention the district fix. I'm going to go into details of each of those pie charts. So we start with the top line of it. This presentation is a little bit different than you're used to. Those veteran board members have never seen me do this way. So this is a kind of an experiment based on some feedback from some of our newer board members and our finance chair. So we start with our target at $609 million. The state automatically deducts off $94 million on tuition. So we never see that money. So that leaves us with $515 million. And then we're spending another close to $11 million transporting those children as the state required. So right off the top, $100 million goes out of our cash account. And I write that the transportation is a minimum cost because in the budget template, I can only see what we spend on charter and non-publics based on Yellow Bus and Metro. I can't break out the students with disabilities transportation that way. And so that's why I say that $10 million, $11 million is a minimum cost. So then, right off the top, I'm carrying over that balance. So we have $504 million to spend. Then we have our fixed costs. So we have debt we have to pay. We have a required transfer to the building maintenance fund. So we have to maintain, we're required to spend a $500,000 levy on maintaining our beautiful buildings that we spend $1 billion doing. We also have district fees that we have to pay. The county auditor charges us to collect our property taxes for us and send them to us. We have our state audit and our bank fees. And then we pay about $1 million in liability insurance premiums every year. So $22 million fixed. That leaves us with $482 million. So from that $482 million, the schools go next. And their budgets, based on student projections and all the formulas, a budget of $267 million to the general fund. That leaves us with $214.5 million for everything else. The strategic initiatives that are included in that school budget are the seventh bell 7-hour student day, the companion classes that we've added for algebra and English at the high school level, those 39 operational paraprofessionals, and then we expanded the paraprofessionals to a 7-hour workday as well. They were working they could work anywhere from 6.5 to 7, 8 hours. We're trying to standardize on 7 hours so they're there when the students are there and they can help with dismissal. So then our strategic initiatives that are centrally managed, not in the school's budget, are My Tomorrow. So we're going to year 5. Vision 2020, we're going into year 3. So that's those 22 buildings. We had 6 buildings going online next year. Cincinnati Preschool Promise, a $9.8 million. Talent Development, which is a brand new initiative, $2.3 million. And School Safety and Culture at $277,000. So that's $28 million on strategic initiatives. That leaves us with $187 million to play with. So our next budget section is all the money that's spent is budgeted centrally, but it's spent out in the schools either for direct services to students or for buildings or adults in the building. So we have our satellite programs, student activities or extracurricular and ed clubs, transportation of $32 million, that's just to transport our children that are educated in our buildings. The security response team, early childhood, elementary and secondary services, those are curriculum, mentors, the FSAs from early childhood department to help people enroll, work with families. The Department of Student Services that support our students with disabilities, student testing. We take the entire technology budget and divide it out in between what is the students and what is business technology. So this is the student version of that. And the school-based building operations at $21 million, that includes all the custodians, the electricity in the buildings, garbage removal in the buildings. In addition to the tuition that is deducted off of our state foundation payments, we actually make direct payments to other places based on our determination of what the best environment of that student is. It's managed by the Department of Student Services for the most part. And then we have a line item for contractual obligations. Those monies are for the retirement, sick leave conversions, the overload budget, the TAC budget, the teacher allocation committee budget. That's that line item. So that subtotal is $144 million, which leaves $41.7 million for central office. In the central administration, that includes the board office budget, superintendent. The school leadership and curriculum is of the assistant superintendents and the curriculum department, so they're buying textbooks and instructional software to help with our academic programs. Research and evaluation, all the public affairs and community engagement, customer help, human resources. Business operations includes the centralized administration for transportation, purchasing, facilities, security, and something else I'm probably not remembering. General counsel, environmental safety, business technology, so this is the business software and the data center that's here and all the people that take to run those things. And then, of course, the accounting operations so that we can effectively pay people. So that total is $50 million. So you can see that we are $8 million away from our budget target. So we have some room to work. So how are we going to close that gap? So we're processing the federal allocations, and the first couple that came in, they look like they're going to be higher than we'd originally forecasted. The difficulty is we don't have the non-public allocation, so that they give us the allocation and we're the fiscal agent, and then the money passes through to the auxiliary services. We don't have those yet, so we're working on those. So we're hoping to be able to shift those 25 people back into the federal programs to help close that gap. Senior leadership is going to be working towards, we did late on Friday discover that there was a duplication in some people's budgets. The school budget did something and then the central office did it too. So we're going back through to make sure we don't have any more duplications. You have a board meeting on June 20th, so we're hoping to give you an update on our progress then. We'll have an update on our federal funds allocations. We'll provide you with the position change analysis and where the growth of the positions that are shifting around are. We'll give you responses to the 5-page feedback document that was provided to us based on your retreat. We're working on those answers. Hopefully I answered some of those questions today. And then we'll provide you with recommendations on how we want to balance the budget. And then on June 25th, which is the last board meeting of the month and the year, we will provide a final recommendation for you. So you have a document in front of you that looks like this. It's a summary of everything I just told you, organized in the same fashion. And so you can see that how it's compared to the original budget that you budgeted last year. So keep in mind, you approve a budget in June. That budget usually includes a contingency line item of $3 million. We use that money to hire teachers and paraprofessionals as our enrollment grows throughout the year. So the school budgets actually end up being higher than the original budget, and so that's what might look a little weird to you there. But we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Messer.
I have to say, I love the format.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Good idea, thank you.
It's great. Yeah, because I think it is a big number, and I hear people talking about, oh, the schools have all this money. But you quickly see how that money erodes just on us turning on the lights each and every day. And it really boils down to a finite amount of dollars that are strategically allocated to allow the district to continue to grow as it is today. So thank you for the format, and I think this is one of those, we could plug this right into a tool that could be useful in helping to educate the public.
Yes.
Long before we ask for more dollars or renewing dollars at a levy, I think this is a great way to just step people through. Yes, it's a lot, but it's accounted for. And I think there's some aha moments for the average taxpayer on things that are on the district's responsibility that they wouldn't believe until they saw this. So thank you for that. The head count and human resources obviously is an important part of what CPS does each and every day. So all of the heads that are within a building are within that school's funding dollars, and then all of central is within each of the line items there on the central administration sheet. Is that correct?
So, no, not quite. So they start off with the school budget. So that top section of this document, it shows you that there's 3,400 positions in the school budgets. And then there's another 800 or 900 that are in that second section that actually serve in the school. So those are the custodians and the technology techs that are residing in the schools. They're budgeted centrally, managed centrally, because sometimes they have to move around. Also included in that would be the paraprofessionals that serve students with disabilities on a one-on-one basis or a 1-to-2 basis, the therapists, physical therapy, psychologists, yes, speech and language pathologists, thank you. That's why we make a great team. So all those kinds of people actually are in the buildings, but they don't actually show up in the school building budget. So that's why we separate that as a separate section. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. You follow me?
So in the larger, or in the high level overview, I'm looking for that 267 number.
Yeah, the 268 million represents the 3,400 teachers, principals, assistant principals, counselors, and paraprofessionals, clerical people, librarians, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay.
Other questions, comments? Ms. Copeland-Dansby?
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. I'm really excited to see how we're planning for progress. I definitely noticed the change in the format. My challenge with the format is that it makes it appear as if we have these dollars in hand and this is what we're using it for, when there's still a huge gap in what we need to operate. So that's just a concern, but I follow it and it's fine, and I love the innovation behind it. I'm happy to hear about the extra counselors. I'm looking for specifics related to things that we talked about when we saw the initial draft, like mental health support to all of our students in our school buildings, and it's probably here, but if you can point me there.
So mental health would be covered under the Department of Student Services budget, or in addition to, it could be paid out of other funds other than the general fund. So what I'm trying to get us, this district to, is to a more holistic format of budgeting, so that we say this is the entire spend of all the budgets and these are all the different funding sources. We're just not quite there yet, but so am I correct, Ms. Bunty, on mental health? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe it might be helpful for me, and we can do this offline or via finance or something like that, to see where there is an actual increase or what those supports are. Mm-hmm. I can't speak for everyone, but I'm terribly concerned about how we're supporting our students and our families.
Sure.
Related to mental health programming, and it's probably there. I'm just not.
Well, we'll make it a point to do that, to explain that in the next presentation. We're going through all the questions and feedbacks that you guys had provided.
Yes, because that was
that was one of the questions.
That's right.
And so Laura's taking notes from, Mrs. Mitchell's taking notes from me right now, so we're going to make sure that we'll include that in the next presentation.
Thank you so much. You guys are great. What's included in school safety and culture? Is that part of that as well, or no?
That's one of the new initiatives, and so Ms. Bunty, would you like to?
So a lot of urban school districts, if you look at the pyramid of supports, they've built out academic supports as well as behavioral supports in a way that supports the social emotional needs of all learners. So one of the things that we've talked about doing for next year is hiring a manager to support school safety and culture. And then right now that lives in the Department of Student Services, but it really benefits all students. And then in addition, to pull our bullying initiative that right now we're using our school social worker.
Yes.
And Meg Girls has done a tremendous job this year in having her come under the auspices of that as well.
Okay, good. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So perhaps when we talk again, or in some way, if you can help me understand exactly how we're addressing the social emotional concerns of our students, as well as, you know, anything related to anti-bullying and things related to safety.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Bolton.
Thank you. This is more than helpful. This is great. I would suggest, and it might be my own confusion, but a little bit more of explanation of personnel costs from a standpoint of you see it there's at the school, they're over in the central office area, but even knowing how much we're spending on classroom teachers, how much we're spending on maintenance people, how much we're spending on special ed teachers versus how much we're spending on psychologists or whatever. I think that breakdown would help us all.
Sure.
As well as an overall understanding of the seniority piece for teachers.
Yes, I'm working on that.
I think that would be helpful. Another point that you mentioned, I think would be good, is again, this is merely general fund.
Yes.
This does not yet speak, so I think some sort of not necessarily a formalized presentation, but even if it's a memo or something that we could share with the public or what have you about the additional funds that we get through grants and what have you. That I think would be helpful. I do think we do need to move much more toward greater community involvement and representation on the Budget Commission. But I've said that before because right now it's very much still very internal review of our own selves, if you will. Looking forward to the federal dollars because I think all of our organizations, great city schools and certainly NSBA has said that those federal dollars aren't as catastrophic, and we've mentioned that before as they're going to be, but it'll be interesting to see your read on it.
Yeah,
when you can analyze it.
For an example, we expected Title I to go down about 9%, and the total allocation we got today was basically flat, but they're changing the formula to the non-public schools, so they're actually going to take a greater share than they used to. So just because it didn't decline doesn't mean we don't get less.
Could be bad.
So, but let me answer your other question. And just for everybody's understanding, when we build the school budgets, we build based on an average salary per position. So, so that way, some of the more veteran teachers may not be discriminated against because they've been more costly to the school, right? So we just do averages. But I will provide those dollars and the positions by job code for you.
Yeah, and that's been the case. I think you've used that average for that very reason for 10 years or somewhere around there.
Yes.
So that just a breakdown of personnel, I think, would help all of us understand the size of this. And again, I keep saying it's transportation is not sustainable. The other piece on this, well, we did the personnel. Projected revenue, since we're kind of at that point in time too. We saw the projected revenue in the 5-year plan that we passed in May. Compared to the projections from last year to what we really have witnessed, has there been an increase or a decrease, or what's the proximity of the projection and the real on FY18?
So revenues are up in 18 because our enrollment's up. So even though we're capped, our state foundation payment grew a little bit. Our property taxes are up because of the changes in tax laws. We're actually collecting money faster. So that only helps us 1 year. It is not a long-term solution, right? It'll be lower next year in our collections in the August collection. Our pilot payments are up because we have more, despite what the city council employee said the other day, the agreements aren't declining, they're actually increasing in number. And so because we've gone computerized on our billing, we're doing a better job of staying on top of that. So some of our revenues are up, but not significantly.
But property valuation is up? Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
But
it's not just the collection piece, is it?
Correct. Property values did go up, but unbeknownst to the public, our revenues don't go up just as a result of that because of the reduction factor. Our fixed sum levies, we have 3 fixed sum levies, and we collect that same amount no matter what happens to the values, right? The millage changes to the individual homeowner depending on whether the values are up or down. The fixed rate levies do fluctuate with new construction and growth and valuation, but only every 3 years.
And to Mr. Messer's point regarding dealing with communicating this to the public, the budget probably needs to have some sort of footnote or presentation or explanation of that regarding the revenue, because everybody's property tax has been going up, and they're saying, oh, good, this school, oh, bad, but oh, good, maybe the school will get more money, and the reality is
Right.
we need to do a better job on that sales point on revenue. But I look forward to looking at more of this, and I'm not asking for it, but it would be helpful to have for the nerds like me, the FY 16 and 17 version of this.
Oh, sure.
That would just be, if that's already done, I don't want it created, but I would like to see that trend since you're using like the 3-year effort.
It's already done, but because we've reorganized, it might take a little bit to restate the prior years to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, but happy to do that.
Mr. Morosky.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wagner. That was very helpful for me as well. I have a couple questions and just a couple comments. My first question is, with the Public Affairs and Family Community Engagement from Ms. Worley's department, this may be too deep in the weeds, but it's of great interest to me. Is a new website part of that? That's more user-friendly?
It is too much in the weeds for me, but Ms. Worley would be happy to answer that question.
All right,
We've not currently made a budget for a new website. The website solution that we have is the organization or a company called Take Notice. It's actually a proprietary solution, so it's not an off the shelf. So it's definitely something. So we're doing a web audit starting next Thursday and moving forward to look at that. I don't have the cost offhand, how much we spent on that proprietary solution to start with that also services each of our school sites as well, because the updates we push out. It would be an expensive endeavor, but certainly one we could look at.
I appreciate that. And in the spirit of, I feel, this board's focus on community engagement, that is a huge part of it. That shouldn't be taken for granted. A website that's actually user-friendly and doesn't have information from 6 years ago that you can engage with and get something out of, which would lead to my second thing. I think this has been a good process, to Ms. Bolton's point. In the future, perhaps, I know tonight City Council is having a meeting in the public, similar to the FC Cincinnati when we went to Taft High School. I just maybe shelve this for next year, have 2. I don't need more meetings, but I think it would be important to maybe have an east side, west side, and maybe even a central meeting, budget hearing, where we could gather input. And then to Mr. Messer's point, I think that could also then make, when we go back to the voters asking for these levy renewals, even easier. We have these opportunities to educate. And then I'll be quiet, I think. 2 more quick things. So I agree with Ms. Bolton that transportation is not sustainable at all. We talk about this in both committees that I'm on, policy and student achievement. And this may be naive of me to think, but I feel like this has come up once tonight already, looking at those neighborhood school boundaries and where we're transporting folks all over the city. Ms. Bolton has instilled in me the same love she has for maps with dots. And seeing just 1 or 2 schools and the dots of where the kids are coming from, and most of the dots aren't even near the school, is telling. And it says a lot of other things too that we won't talk about now, but we should talk about, I think. And lastly, when it comes to revenue, and this is deep in the weeds, but I'm going to tee up my assignment for later. So it's a teaser for Ms. Mitchell and Ms. Wagner. I'd be curious to know who is paying rent and if we're actually collecting our rent from people that we allow to use our spaces.
Oh, sure.
And where that falls in line with revenue.
Sure, we'll be happy to provide that.
Yeah, in addition to that, because actually I had question, and he just kind of hit the question. The concern about the mental health services, for example, we have lots of mental health partners, and the costs of the service specifically, I think, is what the provider deals with. But I was curious to know, in addition to the other things that Ms. Copeland Dansby asked for, is cost of any overhead for housing them, that kind of thing. And are we getting our bang for our buck with that? Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, to follow up on a couple of members' comments, first of all, on the transportation piece, as we talk to our lobbyists and our legislators, and as we get ready for whether there's going to be a change or not in Columbus, a significant one or just an incremental one, the very telling part of this is the fact that the parochial system, what do they pay towards our transportation of their students?
Nothing.
All right. The charter folks,
Nothing.
what do they pay? Okay, I know they're all our children, but the cost of them doing business somehow has to benefit us instead of us carrying that. From a standpoint of, since we already offer the transportation free because we want our children in our buildings and other buildings as well, and we also do more than the state requires, because the state doesn't require us to transport high school kids, but our children need to be transported, okay? They don't live in Wyoming and have cars and can walk, okay? So we have to do those things. My point is there needs to be a change in the law regarding the cost of doing business. It's one thing for us to provide the services, be they, you know, the special ed kind of stuff for the parochials and the other places, the technology, I can even buy that, okay? But the idea that these folks that are operating, some of them at a profit, and some of them in a completely different system, the parochial system, when we have a proud, good parochial system, thank goodness, but the cost of doing business, they need to pay to do their business, especially the profit folks, because that's unreasonable for us to assume that cost, and those millions need to stay with us so we can educate the children for whom we are directly responsible.
Mr. Messer.
I second that emotion. And you know, we did have a conversation at Finance Committee about meeting with our lobbyists to be more proactive about the types of changes that we think need to happen versus constant responding to the firebombs that keep coming our way from others. So I think this is one of those great ideas that could be put with our lobbyists to meet with our very supportive legislators to begin that process. And I think that could be a great change. The only comment after hearing the discussion here is I think it would be great to have just a little frequently asked questions companion piece, because in a document that looks like this, that's really scary to the average taxpayer, this is much more doable, but there are some key questions that people just want to know the answer to. They want to know about the mental health. Are we taking care of our children given today's world that they're living in? What are we doing with bullying and those types of questions? And it's not just in one line items you can point to there. There's things threaded throughout the entire district. So maybe we come up with those frequently asked questions. I've got a pretty good list started here, and I'm sure you do too. But I think we could list the answers that would give that confidence to people as they're looking at the numbers to know that the things that they care about are actually being addressed.
Sure. We started building those FAQs with a group that Ms. Bolton helped and Mr. Rosen helped do when we did the OpenGov website. The financial information is presented on a question and answer basis. So as new questions come in, we can certainly add that information. That's great. Thank you.
Ms. Bolton.
I think that would be helpful even to do a review of that now. And also to that point, it may not be for every single department, but there may be certain line items here or departments. I'm hearing specialist student services, I'm hearing transportation. On some of this, it might not be bad to see the breakdown, maybe not of all of these, but the ones where you've discerned a priority for the board to have a better grip. And I think student services is probably one of them, transportation would be one of them, and I think that would just be helpful. But overall, I think, frankly, financially, I think this is, I'm not talking about the budget, but financially, if we keep making the right decisions, we're in as good a financial position as I can recall in a dozen years. My final thing, does our expansion of preschool, at all address the preschool deserts? So that's maybe for another day. But
that's a good question, because that was included in one of our
yes, so maybe we'll get that
priority
answered.
areas. Yeah. Mr. Messer.
Yeah, just a matter, question of process. I think there is now a step for public engagement and comments. When, I know it's difficult to get people to show up at those types of things, et cetera, but when will that take place?
Tonight, the 20th and the 25th, you know, we had great plans to do a different kind of engagement plan this summer, or this season. Unfortunately, we've had some departmental challenges in terms of lost family members and an employee who passed away this year. And so it's been a kind of a challenging season for us. So our idea is to engage with Ms. Worley and her team on how to better engage the public in this process. Kind of went by the wayside, so we're hoping that we can improve that process going forward.
So in closing, I just want to add one thing just for the board. In your timeline, very clearly, it states in October, the planning for next school year begins. So it's incumbent upon the board members that if we really want to align our goal setting and priority setting with the budget, that we really need to get started in October. And so that's just a reminder, and maybe Eve is going to address that in the discussion under board matters about the calendar. I don't know, but I just wanted to mention that. And I too appreciated the change in format. It was, for me, budget challenged. Mm-hmm. It was very clear. I could follow it very easily. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You done?
Okay, so our next agenda item is board matters. As I stated, we're going to not do the board priorities. I think the budget report kind of dealt with or addressed some of those concerns. Ms. Bolton, you're going to facilitate or talk about the board calendar?
Sure, absolutely. As a follow-up to the board assignment from last year and maybe before, with the creation of the ad hoc committee, the endless ad hoc committee, which finally got unconvened, was reconvened by necessity as the timeline for adopting a board calendar came about. And so the two remaining members of the ad hoc committee, President Jones and myself, convened for a day or so. And with the help of board staff, we came up with a calendar that you all have, I think, seen in our packet. And also, more particularly, besides the calendar, which depicts the number of meetings we have and when we have them, you also had an outline of what would be happening in those particular meetings for both the last 6 months of this year, June through December, and then also all of school year 19, starting with January 19 through the end in December 19. And this was modeled after the board calendar that we did for this particular year, this year, and we made some adjustments based upon what we found out, because we were kind of in a transition of superintendents, as well as trying to organize all of the board work so it's not always falling to the president to try to keep the work moving, but indeed it's a matter of record what's supposed to be happening in particular meetings. And so we have those, both the second half of this year and all of next year outlined by board work and what should be happening, whether it's a superintendent's evaluation, whether it's a 5-year forecast adoption, whether it's new hires, what have you. built into this work plan, as well as then staff was able, fortunately, to put it on a calendar. And to mention more of that, I think there was an attempt to reduce the number of meetings, even from this year. I know we tried to do it this year from last and have had some success. Also to not only reduce the number of meetings, but then to continue the 6:30 start and the 11 o'clock start for the 11 o'clock for the Wednesday meetings and the 6:30 for our business Monday meetings. Also to find ways, if we could, as we built the calendar, and staff did a good job of this, making sure that we not only have enough meetings for what we absolutely know we have to do, but more particularly to try to find ways to also isolate weeks where we are not scheduled to meet. I know the administration would love to meet with us every week and spend this precious time together, but it helps them to not be bothered by us, frankly, or have to get prepared for us, but also it helps in our own planning, both in our work world and in our vacation times and family time. And so we've tried to isolate that, and I think we've got many weeks within throughout the year that we are not scheduled to be meeting, and therefore that could facilitate one's personal and work life as well. So I think, have addressed most of those concerns. One concern we tried to address, and I don't know that it got picked up for this year, meaning next month, but I know for July 19, we had, since it is sort of a downtime, but still the administration needs us to at least approve new contracts and move on, because they cannot, issue the password and get people signed on in a good time if we're not meeting to make that happen. We basically said that there would be 3 meetings in July, and every one of those would be almost a quorum call, where it's okay if we can't have all 7 or something if it's passing on contracts, but it's still a quorum call, and more particularly, those meetings would be at 11 o'clock in the morning, so we're also not taking up the evenings for administration, because that's also the time that some of them actually get to go away and have vacation times themselves. So,
And as needed.
And as needed,
Right.
yeah, we scheduled 3, and we, if we can do more, we can do less, whatever fits into that work schedule. But I do notice that we did, I think we tried, President Jones, correct me, we also said maybe to try to make the this July 18, make those 11 o'clock meetings as well. And to continue to have them, but to have them at 11 o'clock, and they'd be kind of perfunctory. There wouldn't necessarily be a presentation by the public or what have you, but indeed a business kind of thing to facilitate what the administration would need us to do. But I don't think that was noticed yet, because we hadn't decided that yet as a board. But we good?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so moving on. Did you have a question? It's open for discussion.
Thank you for the calendar here. And, thank you to the 3 people who I know come to the 11 a.m. meetings on those Wednesdays. You know who you are. But my question is, have we done benchmarking against other similar districts to determine how often they meet and times of meetings? I think that the 11 a.m. meeting, when we did have a huge crowd, I went out to go to the restroom, and they said, "Why in the world did you do this at 11 o'clock in the middle of the day?" And so I think just by sheer attendance, outside of the 3 community members who are here in addition to all of our staff, it also falls right in the middle of a workday to people who have a day job that are running our schools and leading HR and doing legal and engaging with our community, and sometimes we can tie them up for 3 and 4 hours. So my question is, can we explore that? I think looking back, and I with this being on the agenda, having looked back at my notes, I would say that some of those Wednesday meetings have been slim. And so if we feel like we want to, content-wise, that things, I believe, weren't time sensitive and probably could have been put to another Monday meeting if it was a presentation that we wanted to make sure the public had access to. So if it is that we feel strongly we need to have those 11 a.m. meetings, then maybe we assess the need in advance so we can also feel free to cancel those meetings. The second comment is just on the burden that it does put on the staff. I mean, we have an immense amount of our senior leadership here at every single one of our meetings, and I question whether that is a requirement. One thing that we do at my job is we have representatives from some of the stakeholder groups who are in a rotation, attend our meetings, and then the next morning they do a standing around the table and they give, here are the key takeaways from last night. And it mitigates the burden for everybody to be at every meeting each and every time. So I think there's a question on the time of those Wednesday meetings and whether or not they're necessary, and then are we being prudent with the time that we're requiring of our administration.
Ms. Copeland-Dansby.
So the Wednesday meetings traditionally were an opportunity for the administration to present necessary items to the board and to give us an opportunity to, I don't know about being less formal, but you know, an opportunity to dig into what we were being presented. I want to say sometime last year, we moved those to official business meetings because they were called the Committee of the Whole. So it was just like all of the committee work coming together as Committee of the Whole. So then we made it a normal business meeting so that we could conduct business. If there were something necessary that we needed to vote for the treasurer or operationally or something like that. It was also intended to give the public a different opportunity to engage with us rather than at the time 7 o'clock meeting, now 6:30 meeting. So at that point, we decided amongst us that we have so much work to do that we couldn't lessen the number of meetings. In fact, we used to meet more. But we really felt strongly that we couldn't lessen the meetings by any more than what we already had. My concern is this meeting and our Monday night meetings and the time. Have you all checked the time lately? Right now? It's going on 9 o'clock. And so to be, in my opinion, to be functional and what's the word I'm looking for? Just to have some success with what we're trying to get done, I think we need to take a look at how we're presenting information. I think having 2 really long, much-needed presentations in one night is a lot. Maybe the schoolwork could have been done on a Wednesday and give us time to really dig into the budget. So my opinion is it's hard for us to lessen the number of meetings because we have a great deal of work to do. I think we could do better by being a little bit more efficient with how we're putting the agenda together.
I just, if I could comment on that, I think, it's really hard when we have these conversations, we go this way and then we go that way, and we do it year after year after year. One of the things that I clearly heard, which has in fact resulted in us having an extended Monday meeting, is that we wanted to have more time to talk publicly about some of the things that we're dealing with, in the spirit of transparency. These things do take time. And so I agree and I fully support having efficient meetings, and I don't want to be here late either because I have to work too. But, we're either going to have it one way or we're going to have it another way. Now, I'm happy if board members want to sit, and are we scheduled for a work session sometime in this period, Ms. Bolton, in the next few months on this schedule? You don't have, but that's a question because we have to make certain decisions and then we have to stick with our decisions. And so, if we want to make the meeting more efficient, let's talk about how we make it more efficient. But then we can't complain about not being transparent or not sharing information publicly. So that's what happened in this meeting. And when you get into these detailed conversations, we have meaty discussions. And so that's a concern. So, you know, when I say we can't have it both ways, we need to decide what we're going to do and then stick with it. I agree, they are long. We used to get out. So, Ms. Bolton.
I just wanted to finish
okay.
my point. The other thing is, when we altered the calendar to have that Wednesday meeting continued, we moved it out of room 1A to this space and pay the additional fee to ensure that every meeting we have is open to the public and is live streamed. Because those Wednesday meetings did not normally have an opportunity for folks to watch if they were not present in the room. And then also, again, you know, the important part about it is it being a regular business meeting. So that's just a little bit of history there. So the part about the transparency and the openness and that, and I know the hour is odd, but it does give people an opportunity to watch via live stream.
Ms. Bolton,
Yes, I know that I believe we reduced the number of the 11 o'clocks, where I think for the year of 19 anyway, I think there's 12 of them. So that may be too many. The history of that, as I understand it, and the reason they were committee of the whole was that it was an opportunity to have dialogue across, and it didn't necessarily have to be as public engaged as much as it was us trying to get educated, because in those meetings, like 10 years ago, the superintendent ran those meetings, and we were attending, so to speak, and that was kind of interesting. And worked out well, and it was when the administration knew we needed some education, and we said we needed some education. But to facilitate the meeting and make these meetings shorter, and most of them have been shorter than they were 2 or 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, certainly. But the facilitation was to try to get more business done then, so they could organize their work in a more rudimentary way and routine way. So I think we can look at it as to topics of what we're doing. And I think this board calendar would allow us to do that if the president and the superintendent can then map out the kinds of topics. I think this was rare tonight, the two various, one that had been postponed for a number of times, and then one that is the budget that's just sort of the crunch of the year. But I second Ms. Copeland-Dansby's point about doing this publicly now instead of in room 1A, and the streaming opportunity that people have. I think we can do it, but I think it's organizing the work together. The superintendent has a year almost under her belt, and the president does, and everybody can kind of figure out how best to organize. Because I know we all love the presentations, we want the presentations. I'd even like to see more students perform at some of these things and a little bit more celebratory stuff. But I think if those folks can get together, I think it's the topics probably and the planning, but.
I would completely agree.
Yeah. I think that this is certainly a conversation that we need to think through and make a decision about.
October 20th is the next work session.
Okay, October 20th is a work session.
Because we canceled the retreat for July, at least in this proposed calendar.
Yes, we canceled all the retreats. We're calling them board work sessions. We'll talk more about that.
But that July one coming up is
yes,
gone from
this just to add to the points that have already been made, and then we can move on. When we ask for agenda items, well, let me go a step back. When we first talked about adding board matters, we talked about having maybe one topic that we can have a full, robust discussion about, one of our higher priority things. But what happens is everybody's issues and subject matters are priority. And so sometimes, believe it or not, I have had to prioritize when we get 5 agenda items because everybody wants to talk about it. I end up having to prioritize those. And I try to think through what's the most pressing concern right now that we want to have this public conversation. So we've spent a lot of time. I think where we've seen the biggest difference is in the board matters discussions, because we've added that, and it's added a lot of time that we've had to talk. So what I'm saying is it's a legitimate conversation, and we can have some more conversation about it when we have our work session. Ms. Copeland Dansby.
Yeah, I think also in the spirit of transparency and in community engagement in a way to support the public is perhaps to move the speaking of the public up. Because if there were someone here
that's been
tonight,
a concern. Yes.
Then, you know, I'm very anxious to hear, you know, what we have on the agenda tonight.
We can do that. We can do that. That has been recommended. Yes. Okay. All right, so we're gonna move on, I promise. We're gonna get there. Does anyone have any kudos?
No.
Mike? Okay, Mr. Morosky.
I have some early kudos for Ms. Copeland Dansby, Mr. Messer, and Ms. Bolton, who are convening tomorrow for the first time ever for the Strategic Planning and Engagement Committee of the board. To repeat myself, this board has made community engagement a very big focal point of our work, is to the point that we've created our own committee. So I just want to give you all kudos for tomorrow. I wish I could be there and be a fly on the wall, but I'm not going to be able to, but I'll be there in spirit. I think it's really great, and I really can't wait to see how well we can bring the community in here to help make better systems so that all these things we talk about improve. So to everybody else too, kudos.
I'll do Facebook Live for you.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other kudos? Okay, in Mrs. Bates' absence, do we have any report on retirements?
There's one. I'll be happy to give it to us like really quick. Yes. So there is a retirement from our March proceedings on the 21st. There was an approval for Ms. Martha Walsh effective July 1, and it should be corrected to read June 1. So congratulations to Ms. Walsh. And Ms. Bates probably read this in another proceeding on March 21st, 2018 to approve a retirement for Ms. Linda Ewald, and that action should actually be rescinded.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. We are now at the item on our agenda for hearing of the public. Each speaker has 3 minutes to speak, and Mrs. Wagner will be our timekeeper. When the buzzer goes off, your 3 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. When your name is called, please come to the podium to speak. And I'll read, I believe we have 5 speakers, and I'll read them. We have 5 or 6, and I'll read them 3 at a time. Marlena Brookfield, Kristen Barker, and Maya Velasquez. Sorry if I mispronounced.
Good evening, again, board, for the millionth time. I just want to clarify, before you talk about it, the employment of the superintendent policy, 1220, the original says, we are looking at the second paragraph here, final sentence, the person selected for this position shall reside in the district. And then the amended, or what's going to be on the resolution, we've added the line, however, this requirement may be waived by the board. And I just would like to hear some discussion on that, because I don't fully I need to know why it's okay or why it's not. So if that could be talked about when the resolution comes up, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a poem. My name is Maya Velasquez. I go to Gamble Montessori. I love my school and I want to stay there this year. I found out there might not be room for my classroom next year. This makes me really sad. I love Gamble. Please keep my whole school together.
Thank you.
So my name's Kristen Barker, and that's my daughter, Maya Velasquez. You may not have been able to hear her, but I'm sure you heard, and I'm surprised I'm crying, actually. We love Gamble Montessori. My daughter actually has been at Winton Montessori, she's been at Parker Woods and Gamble, and I cannot tell you how blessed I feel to be in the Cincinnati Public School District. I cannot tell you. She has had the dream team at every school. It has been awesome, awesome. And so Gamble, she's now gonna be a 10th grader there, and it was really shocking. On May 11th, she came home and she said, "Mom, I think I'm being fired from school." And I was like, what? What is going on here? And it turns out that there needs to be 4 preschool classrooms need to be moved into Gamble. And there's only 1 entirely free classroom. And so what our awesome principal, who I adore, said when he heard he had to do this, just trying to figure out where these students would go, he made a comment like, well, we have 3 MH units and that my daughter is in one, and so maybe they need to move out. He didn't really mean it. In fact, Maya and I immediately started going to the LSDMC and the PTO meetings, and he said he was just trying to figure out what to do, and he would never in any way move all of our kids out because they're an important part of the school, and I'll tell you they are. It's like deep integration, it's deep inclusivity. Maya, and I did not anticipate this. Maya was in Annie, she's in the senior choir. I mean, a deep, real part of that school, and we just love it. And so the challenge there, though, is that Gamble's so awesome that it's really growing. 38 seniors graduated, but there were 100 7th graders. So the school just doesn't fit. And so we started a petition campaign, and I want to deliver these tonight. And what it says is, Gamble Montessori has been growing each year and has reached the physical capacity for its current building. At this time, there's only 1 entirely free classroom. In May, it was announced that 4 preschool classes are being moved into Gamble for the 2018-2019 school year. Adapting to this new situation is not easy. There was initial talk that 3 multiple handicap units were at risk for being moved out. This caused a lot of concern. One of Gamble's strengths is inclusivity and deep integration. At this point, efforts are directed towards squishing and squeezing everyone in. In order to keep the whole Gamble community together and make a wonderful resource available for Cincinnatians, we, the undersigned, are asking CPS administration and the board to move Gamble Montessori into the former Mother of Mercy High School at 3036 Work Road. So we really love that next agenda item coming up soon. This move would not only maintain Gamble's inclusive environment and allow for its organic growth, but it also opens up the possibility for Gamble Montessori to become a pre-K through 12 Montessori school. So there's hundreds of people that signed this petition, and I don't know if there's someone I could give it to. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Okay, so we have 2 more speakers. Caprice, I'm sorry. Yes, I was going to actually save it until assignments, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Just to provide some relief to our parent and our wonderful student, we have no intention of moving any of the classrooms out of Gamble for next school year, so rest assured that you will not be moving to another school unless you choose to. I believe that the capacity of the Gamble building is what? It's like 650. And how many students are currently there? There are about 500. So the students have not expanded beyond the capacity of the building. The fact that all the classrooms are being used doesn't necessarily mean that the students are outgrowing the capacity. So I just wanted to make that clarification. But rest assured, we are not moving any units out of Gamble for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, for the clarification. I was actually going to ask if someone could talk to them one-on-one personally, but thank you for the clarification. Okay, the next 2, Caprice Johnson, Pamela Bowers.
Good evening. I am a parent at Gamble Montessori. I have a
junior. I am also an LSDMC and PTO. My concern is that we've done so much for so little that we haven't complained about anything. We haven't gotten anything either. Gamble is growing. And though you say the capacity is 600 and something, consider the fact that that school building is old and we got some big kids. We need the space. We wouldn't ask if we didn't need it. The space that we did have was so little that is now being taken up by the preschoolers, which I understand. You gotta do what you gotta do. But Mother of Mercy School would be perfect for us. I think we're just about the only school, high school in Cincinnati Public that hasn't had any adjustments or improvements. You've made new schools, built new schools, but you haven't done anything for Gamble Montessori High School. So if you would please consider having our school move. As a matter of fact, it would be so great. You can give the preschoolers Gamble School and just move the high schoolers to Mercy Montessori. That's just so logical. It makes too much sense to be real. Seriously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm gonna be quick because I'm fading away fast. I'm Pam Bowers, and I am the parent of two, well, one just graduated, but one more CPS student that I'm happy to say attends Gamble Montessori. Just to piggyback off of what the other two parents had already mentioned, I've been a partner, which I wear several hats in CPS. I'm the lead agency at Gamble, and I'm glad to hear you clarify with the mental health budget, because I was definitely going to ask about that line budget you asked her about regarding mental health services, which is one of the services we provide at Gamble. I'm also a parent, which I've already stated. I'm a community member and a taxpayer. When we think about Gamble, Gamble did have some renovations and all this new school renovations. We were on the bottom of the chopping block. It was not intended for Gamble to be successful. Unfortunately, Gamble is successful, and we have grown. The only thing that we have received are new windows and air conditioners and a junior high/elementary school building. Our gym is not sufficient. My son is a student athlete. He's a very good student. He's a 3.2 GPA. He plays baseball. Gamble just got a baseball team this year because the numbers are so low because we can't grow. We would be an ideal feeder for the West Side if we had more capacity. We offered more athletics and more clubs to our students and families. He plays basketball. The gym is not an adequate facility. It's an elementary school gym. It's not suffice. We don't have a weight room. So for us to be competitive and to compete, we're moving to I think the CMAC next year. To compete with schools at that capacity, we need adequate facilities. The building that we're in is not adequate for our high school students, 7 through 12. And I just want to agree with Caprice and the other parent that we do need to move to a new building, and Mercy would be ideal. So I am very interested in hearing that if you guys vote to purchase Mercy, that we are the ones who enter Mercy, Mother of Mercy High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morosky, would you please present the resolution for board consideration?
Yes, I am presenting a resolution amending board policies 1100, district organization, 1110, assessment of district goals, 1210, board superintendent relationship, and 1220, employment of the superintendent. Basically, these revisions that were run through policy committee, we came to the conclusion that we determined the revision of the current board policies were in order to make them consistent with current state laws and district procedures. As most folks know who attend these meetings are folks on the board, and for Mr. Davis' own edification, in policy committee, we've been going through all our series to update them and make sure that they're all in line, because that work hadn't gotten done for a couple of years at least. So I present the resolution as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Can somebody clarify, can you clarify the one comment that was made about the
I
superintendent?
was coming back in, and I knew, I picked up on the tail end of it, but I also wasn't at that policy committee meeting, so I'll ask Ms. Bolton too.
Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, I would answer the comment, first of all, by saying that it is on 12/20. However, this requirement may be waived by the board. That was added to give everybody even more access or range of, how shall I say it, recruiting someone. And certainly, I think in the dialogue that took place, there was an interest in having our superintendent live in the district, as our current superintendent does. But it was also a recognition that it's possible that you could have a situation where a person would, may not be, when first hired, may not be living here, would need to be moved here, or they may be a parent in a neighboring school district with a child, and they would prefer not to move officially until the child has gotten through high school. So I think it really was a lesson in recruitment. I think the board's terribly committed to having people, the superintendent, live within the district for obvious reasons. But I think it was a recognition of when it comes to, the rubber meets the road in recruitment, you don't want to limit yourself too much, because you'd even be limiting the pool that you'd even be interviewing if with that. So it was more of a personnel kind of recruitment piece, but a point well taken and well held.
Any other discussion?
I would just add we did add, in the interest of the community, we did add, as you can see in the redlining, there's a couple of references where what the superintendent's doing is in accordance with the vision and mission of the board and the goals of the board. And as we expanded that, it wasn't necessarily to give power or whatever to the board, but indeed to recognize that the board is representing the community, so that it's another comprehensive effort to make sure the community is represented and involved, and that the superintendent carries out not only the goals and the vision and the mission of the board, but we have those vision, mission, and goals because we're representing the community. So that was an attempt to do that.
And to piggyback off of that, one more significant piece in Board Policy 1110, which used to read that the Board of Ed would work with the administration to establish goals. It now reads the Board of Education will work with the administration and the community to establish vision, mission, and goals. So that may very well be the most significant change in here, in my opinion. Not to take away from your changes.
Oh, no,
so.
I agree with you, and I had every thought that you would be sure to say that, because I know how we feel about that.
That's right.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
Mr. Davis, sorry.
Yes.
President Jones?
Aye. Ms. Bolton, would you please present the resolution for board consideration?
Yes, on behalf of the board, resolution to purchase the former Mother of Mercy High School property located at 3036 Work Road. Whereas the Board of Education of the City School District committed to responding to the district's growing enrollment by creating additional high-quality educational seats, and whereas the following announcement of the closing of Mother of Mercy High School and Macaulay High School, and opening, joining them as a new school, Mercy Macaulay High School, on the Macaulay School campus, representatives of the district engaged in discussions and negotiations with representatives of the Sisters of Mercy, and so on and so forth. And whereas the Mercy High School property consists of approximately 13.71 acre parcel of real property located in the Westwood neighborhood of City of Cincinnati, Hamilton County, Ohio. Bearing auditor parcel numbers are listed. 124,000 or so square foot high school building with a street address of 3036 Work Road, and a 1,856 square foot house with a street address of 3021 Ramona Avenue, and a 2,778 square foot house with street address of 3036 Epworth Avenue. Whereas attorneys for the district and the Sisters of Mercy have negotiated a purchase agreement for the district to purchase the property from Sisters of Mercy for $2,850,000 as the purchase price. And whereas the board appreciates the long history of the high school education by the Sisters of Mercy at the property and the opportunity to continue to use the property to educate district students, we resolve a number of things, but most particularly be it finally resolved that the board president and treasurer are hereby authorized and directed and empowered tonight in the name of and on behalf of the board to take all such further action and to execute, deliver, and record as applicable in the name and on behalf of the board the purchase agreement and any and all other instruments and documents as may be deemed by such president and treasurer necessary for appropriate to acquire property as the president and treasurer executing the same shall approve. The execution, filing, delivery, and recording as applicable thereof to be conclusive evidence of such approval. I submit as written on behalf of the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Ms. Bolton?
Proudly aye. And this is a red letter day for the district.
It's a big deal.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to keep going. I need a motion for a 48-hour waiver for the next resolution.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Did we read the?
I did. Thank you.
Second.
Who's reading it?
Ms. Messer.
I got it. Ms. Wagner?
Ms. Bolton? This is a 40-hour waiver for the resolution, the next
Oh, thank
resolution.
goodness, I was like,
Are just partying way too much.
I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm pretty, I mean, I spent part of my life in Sailor Park. This is pretty exciting. Yes.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Mr. Davis, would you please present the resolution for board consideration?
On behalf of the board, I present a resolution authorizing the 2018-19 membership into the Ohio High School Athletic Association. I present the resolution as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Yes. Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
Yes, I do, but it'll be very quick. 2 pieces of good information. I'm going to see if I could explain the first piece of good information that really talks about our employees. So Euler High School, Euler is a small school, and the OHSAA Constitution requires that a school they have to sponsor at least 2 varsity sports per season to be in that league. Well, because of the size of that school, they could not meet that requirement, which meant that this young man, Ricky Thomas II, who is a runner, would not be able to compete. And so Dan Hoying, the principal, Amy, her last, Randolph, as well as a teacher and Josh Harden, all went to Columbus to petition for this young man to be able to enter into this track meet, and they were successful. And so it just really goes to show how far our staff are to our students and how dedicated they are to make that journey to Columbus and to really fight on this young man's behalf. So I thought that was a really piece of good information that you all needed to know. The second thing is, for the first time ever, Cincinnati Public Schools, Lauren Worley's department, has received the Cincinnati Pinnacle Award, Best Use of Content for Inbound Marketing and Engagement.
That's
So
good.
congratulations. So, Ms. Worley, would you please come and get your award?
Oh, great.
Special kudos to the entire team. We received this award for the IMCPS internal campaign, and we couldn't do that without our friends in HR and throughout the enterprise for this. So it's really special to accept it. And it's also a little bit of a throwing it down. So now we've got at least 8 more categories to compete in next year. So, so thank you very much.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
So, second?
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer? Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve the revised report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Bolton?
Just one comment. I know, I'm assuming it's because we're at the end of the fiscal year or getting there that we see a rise of the then and nows. Probably true. Thank you.
Other discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Aye.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. Regarding inquiries and updates, there's only one very quick thing. I understand that the ACES meeting went really well last week, and that the October 9th date was confirmed. Is that correct? Confirmed? Okay.
Yeah, I won't be there.
I won't be there either. I'm out of town that week. So,
I would just say it was suggested the 9th. It was their suggestion.
okay, well, I'm just telling you, the email that I got, it said, okay. So do we want to confirm October 9th, or do we want to try for another date in October?
I would only suggest that time is of the essence regarding the topic that was to be presented. In part, one of the agenda items was, again, talking about the abatement issue and the negotiations, and most particularly, I think, said we would like to have the district present our perspective regarding the abatement negotiations and issues. So
Okay.
I think we need something in October. If we can get a quorum, that'd be great, but I mean, it was, once again, they suggested and we didn't say no, and it
Okay,
doesn't
so
count.
I'll work with Ms. Kamine on that, and the other,
See how many of us can be there.
on October 9th? You
Well,
can
we
be
know,
there?
no, I can't. We know that 4 of us can, but we don't know about Melanie.
Yeah.
We know 4 can, but.
Okay, how
Yeah,
about if
or-
we do, I'll have Ms. Davis just kind of reach out to folks to confirm some
Great.
dates. Okay, all righty. Are there any assignments? Mr. Morosky?
Just the one that I had given before, and I just want to give a little more clarity and just be a little more direct. I wrote it down for myself. So the assignment was, who pays rent in our district to Cincinnati Public for space, and who doesn't? And is there a standard market value rate that we charge?
Okay. Other assignments? Ms. Bolton?
I have 2 announcements, just again to reiterate that we did cancel the retreat for this July, next month, and to ask the question about whether or not we wanted to move, and maybe we don't now, want to move the July 9th and July 23rd this coming month to an 11 o'clock kind of quorum call only to pass on contracts. So Yeah, we had eliminated the July retreat work session. And we had suggested that this coming, in 19, the July meetings be at 11. And I just wanted to know, there's one 11 o'clock meeting this coming July and two 6:30 meetings. And I just wanted to know if we wanted to change all three of those to kind of be business regarding contracts and change it to 11 o'clock instead of do the 6:30.
Or you mean 11 o'clock on all 3 days, or
Yes.
canceling potentially one date?
Any way we wanted to play it, if they were all 11 o'clock, then it's a matter of just us being able to facilitate their hiring and
And having a quorum.
onboarding.
Right. Yes.
I think that's very important, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I can think back to a couple Julys ago where we did not take that into consideration and we had some challenges. So
Yes.
thank you for that. I would move that we do 2 11 o'clocks in July, whichever dates work best for the administration.
We're scheduled to have one 11 o'clock on July 18th.
18th.
And then one on the 9th and the 23rd. The administration could tell us which of those two dates would be preferable to get the work done regarding contracts, be it the 9th or the 23rd. They could tell us now.
And/or, if it's okay, I think I like doing them on the 9th and the 23rd and eliminating the 18th.
Okay.
Because the 9th can catch anything early and the 18th can close you out unless you prefer to do the 30th even. You understand what I mean? To give you an early date and to give you a late date. And if you're not prepared to tell us right now, I think that's okay. You can probably work with Ms. Davis and get that information to us as soon as possible.
So I'm open. The only thing is on the 23rd is the 1 week that I was actually going to take vacation, so. But.
Oh, get
Oh, your vacation? We want you to do that.
Okay. So we're looking at the 9th or the 23rd at this point, and Superintendent, if we can let us know through the office. We'll make sure that folks get the information, but that was a
The
good
2
suggestion.
in July
Yes.
and the 9th and 23rd makes
Right.
sense.
Thank you so much for catching that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And no retreat in the middle of July.
Yes.
Okay. Any other assignments? Ms. Bolton?
I would like to assign to the administration 2 things. One, to be ready for the presentation from the district perspective regarding the abatement issue, and how we see it versus how the city saw it. And the second part of that assignment is that I would like a formal letter from this board to the city council and the city manager and the mayor requesting that the city of Cincinnati's budget include them paying for the crossing guards that are their employees, and they have the jurisdiction for it, rather than us reimbursing them and paying for their employees. We do not have jurisdiction in the streets, the city does. Many of the communities within Hamilton County, and it's a mixed bag statewide, the cities take their responsibility seriously, and in the interest of safety, I think we should make them own that responsibility. And I'd like a formal letter asking them to pay for their employees, providing support and safety under their jurisdiction.
Just a question, was there discussion about that specifically at the
It
meeting?
was raised by both Mr. Morowski and me, for sure.
Okay.
And it was broached that day. And keeping in mind that this was all part of the 1999 agreement, where 3 things were mentioned: the school nurses, the crossing guards, and our resource officers. And then there was a line saying we could never sue if they ever stopped paying for it, and somehow we signed that.
Yep.
I'm not asking that we sue anybody, but I do think it's time for the city, who is very committed to pedestrian safety by their own admission, they need to pay for the crossing guards, and the treasurer can tell us the amount of money generally that would entail, whether she knows that today or not, but that is only right.
$741,000.
Well, there you go.
Okay. So that's assignment. Any other assignments? Mr. Morosky and Ms. Copeland.
In the theme of litigation and budgetary matters, I would like to give an assignment to our awesome General Counsel, Mr. Hoying. This is very premature, and I realize that. But preparing for the worst, I would be curious to know what the feasibility is to sue the state of Ohio for the $15 million that was stolen from us through that ECOT scandal, which clearly the state was complicit in. And I'd just be curious to know what the feasibility of that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Copeland Dansby.
Trying to keep my train of thought here. So it sort of goes along with something that I heard Mr. Morosky mention in his assignment, I think, and Ms. Bolton in her assignment, I think. In closing with the ACES meeting, we talked about just what Ms. Bolton said, the administration preparing information based on our view of it. But further than that, I also mentioned that we want to talk about what we have been paid, what's still outstanding, what we're still due, and all that kind of thing, because we've already talked about that in finance. And then also developing a timeline by which we would like to have some check-ins. Because I think the part of the conversation that created some level of assignment was that the city administration would create some sort of committee or something or what have you. And so I just want to make sure that we're represented fully in the way that we need to be, and then that we also understand what we haven't been paid, if that exists. Thirdly, we talked about those dollars supporting the CLCs, I think, and some other stuff. I might need a little bit of help on that. But, what do we want those dollars to support moving forward? There was some conversation about that. It was in that presentation that we were given from the city that talked about what the understanding of those tax dollars would support for the school district. Am I following that right?
So the 1990 agreement, the monies that they pay us was to go to our facility plans. And so that money actually pays our debt that's on the facility master plan. That's what the agreement was, that we would spend the money on construction of facilities.
So I think my understanding, and I could be totally wrong, I'm not sure, but that doesn't have to be the remaining or the new understanding. Like we can determine and decide what the dollars support for the district.
True, but then we'd have to come up with another funding source to pay that debt.
Well, see, I'm not asking to change it. I just want us to be clear about what those things are. And then we also talked about the length and the terms of that contract not necessarily needing to be for 20 years. So I just really want us to dig deep into what is the best benefit for us.
Sure.
And I know there's a level of compromise in that we'll have to have, smile. But let's just be sure very concretely what works best for the district.
So I'm just trying to understand. So basically, there's an ask for administration to look into these costs or the understanding around the 1999 agreement, what those costs pay for, and length of the contract.
Well, what it needs to be moving forward, and apparently there's a
Okay.
definite tie to facilities. And then just as this committee forms and there's conversation and some sort of agreement trying to be reached, what should those terms be? What is the best benefit for the district?
Okay, Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, I appreciate Member Copeland-Danzig coming up with that, because I do think that somewhere very near, prior to that October meeting, we ought to have a meeting with General Counsel and Treasurer and Superintendent as a board, probably in closed session, because it's about negotiations and what have you, about what it is that we really are concerned about and really want to be able to have our team start to make the argument. And the first argument we're making was probably that presentation that's going to be coming from a standpoint of our perspective. So I think it would be good for administration to be thinking about that, and because let's also figure this out. If we have renewal in 19, I think, do we not? Is it 19? Yeah. We also have board elections as well as renewal and everything else, and I don't know if we really want to be having this particular discussion with the city unless we have to at that late date. So, I mean, there's lots of things to be thinking about in this arrangement.
Like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Let the
Okay.
games begin.
Any other assignments? Having no other business before us, the meeting is adjourned. Bye.
Bye.